Welcome to the Bak Up Podcast, a show on how technology is changing the way we live and do business. I'm your host, Ioannis Bakayanis. Bak Up is ready to start. Hello. This is episode 9 of the Bak Up Podcast. Happy New Year, everyone. 2020 has been a challenging year, and the podcast took a much-needed break. However, we started 2021 with a bang, as our guest in this episode is the Chief Data Officer and co-founder of one of the hottest AI startups, YData. She's a seasoned data scientist and very passionate about data, privacy, and ethics in AI. She's Fabiana Clemente. Fabiana, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Janice. Thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm very pleased to be here and Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's great having you. And correct me if I'm wrong. Your education was around applied math or economics.
Applied math.
Applied
So,
math. Okay.
yes, exactly. So, my bachelor, at the time, I did not have any idea of a specific profession that I wanted to pursue. So, I've decided to take a bachelor in applied maths. I was passionate about mathematics. Also, my father was also a big passion about math. So it was an easy choice. After that, it was when I decided to focus a bit more in what today we can talk about. That is the early days of data science or economics, let's say. And I decided to take a specialization in econometrics. But afterwards, I decided to and as I was already working in the IT, specifically in BI, I decided to broaden my scope a bit and become a data scientist. So that was more or less, I was already passionate about data, very passionate about taking insights from data. I already had a lot of the concepts of data science throughout my bachelor, my master's. So it was an easy choice, let's say.
Uh, is there something specific that drove you towards that direction? Like for example, one of my favorite movie of all time is The Matrix. So that was kind of the let's say ground zero for myself when I was thinking about what I'm gonna do in the future. Was there something like a ground zero moment for you?
Let me think. I don't think so. At least not as as differentiator as yours. I think it was about what data could let me know. I had some glimpses of what data and what information you can extract from it, and that was something that really drive me like passionate about. So how can I just with this Excel file can extract so much about the world around just with algorithms and mathematics and statistics? So why not have that as my profession? It was more on that side. So I did not have that moment. I got passionate about knowing and learning more about the field, definitely.
So you can say like you were intrigued by the impact of what these
Yes,
capabilities could have in our lives and in your, especially at your work, right?
definitely. Yes,
And now you're the CDO of YData. Uh,
true.
could you give us the elevator space of YData and what is your day-to-day life looks like?
Yeah, so we developed a data first platform um, for improving and building data sets. So data scientists can deliver high quality training data in a fraction of the time and cost they used to. This platform includes tools that enable them to reduce this time, such as synthetic data, automated data processing, and labeling, for example, as well as working environments that they can benefit at the scale to process data.
Very interesting.
That is in a nutshell what is YData. Of course, we can get a bit more into details. But essentially, we want to ease the life of data scientists while always pursuing for high quality data. That's our motto.
Yeah, and
And
what drove you
yeah,
towards that direction? What was the gap that you saw in the interest in the AI ecosystem
yeah,
that sparked that why data to be founded? To be honest.
that's a very good question. Um, so I definitely started working with data in my first job. So, and throughout the different experiences I had, I had the first one in a very big enterprise. And during my time, and I was working as a solution architect specific for data projects, and all the process just to get data was so messy, so constrained by security and policies, um, that myself as an architect and also a data scientist, I was not able to get access to the data just for a proof of concept or just even to drive or to draw what could be a project from a data set. So I was just designing projects in a blind way, hoping that that data will have the value I expect. And I was taking like 6 months or more just to validate these assumptions that I had while designing these projects. That was the first experience that I had, having like a problem and realizing that exists a problem. So companies do want to leverage AI and machine learning, but the data many times is not accessible for the right teams at the right time. That was the first one. Then, okay, this is an enterprise. We understand it's normal. It can take some time. But what about the startups and the startup life? That's when I decided to join startups. And the experience was a bit different. So at that stage, startups are fast, also in the development and also in the access to data. So usually it's not the biggest problem that you will face, but definitely the problem around the quality of the data and also the wrong assumptions that if you are the one collecting the data, then your data will always be great and enough, was what I found in some startups. So everyone in the ecosystem, from enterprises to startups, want to leverage AI. They want to become like the next Amazon or the next Google in the verticals where they are. But the fact is, they don't have like the base understanding that data can have a huge impact, either because it's not accessible at the right time in the right manner, or either because you just do assumptions that has enough quality and you don't validate those assumptions as you should. And that was this experience that took me to talk with my co-founder that was also working in the data area. He was managing data projects, to have this discussion. So listen, this is definitely a problem. So how can we think about solving this? What could be an option? Uh, and basically we start from there. So we started from the first problem, which was the access to data, and we built on top of that towards a broader scope around data quality.
Yeah, definitely. I can agree 100% on that statement that data are very hard. They're very hard to come, and they're very hard to especially leverage them if you don't know the lay of the land, especially if there are two ways about it. Either you don't have enough data, or you have too much, or you have too much data that you don't know where to start or what to do with them.
Exactly.
And why data yourself are deal mainly with data sets that are used to train machine learning models. And you mentioned about that. When are we talking about real world data sets, we often hear the term data quality. What do we
Mhm.
mean when we say data quality? Can you give us like a definition for that?
it's pretty hard to give a definition. So saying there is a standard around what is data quality, I would say it would be a too bold of a statement to say. Because if we see data quality is a term that has been already mentioned for around some time. So since we heard the first objectives around building a data warehouse inside the organization. So, right. So, data warehouses were definitely, are still definitely a way to ensure that your data has quality or is structured in the right way for you to extract insights. It's just these insights are a bit different from the insights that you want to build with machine learning, let's say. But ETLs and data processing are already a way to ensure part of the data quality that you need. So you are going to ensure inconsistencies, for example. You are going to check for completeness within your data. You are going to check if your data is time relevant for the case that you are proposing to solve or you are looking for a question. So these are dimensions that you need to measure in order to have data quality. Of course, there are others that can be considered though. So you definitely want to evaluate whether you have biases, for example, on your data. That's that's one of the things that a few years ago probably you wouldn't hear so much or so frequently. But definitely bias and having bias is a way of having worse data quality, for example, for your business. So I cannot say that there is a specific uh, definition, but we can say that data with quality do comply with these dimensions: completeness, um, timeliness of insights extraction. You have as well the impact, or in this case, the non-existence of bias in the data, and so on.
Do you think that the term data quality evolves through time? And as you said, like a couple of years ago, we wouldn't even mention the biases within the data set or biases within a model. Do you think that the term or the quality of the work is machine learning or data sets is evolving? And what do you think if it does? Like, where do you think we're gonna be in a couple of years? What are we gonna be thinking?
Definitely, I think the data quality term definitely has evolved, or at least has different meanings depending on what type of applications you are talking about for the data. So yeah, definitely for data warehouses, that was a specific definition for data quality. Now that we are starting to be worried about fairness and how much impact can have data on our day-to-day lives, and how much can data amplify differences within that exist within the society, we start hearing bias associated with data quality. In the future, and I think as machine learning will evolve, my bet is that data quality will also evolve with it, with the evolution of machine learning. But how will evolve, I'm not sure if I can answer that question properly today at this point, because we are still working on what can be data quality, having in considerations the problems that we have today. So it's not yet defined as of today. So for me, it's still a pretty blurry future, let's say, for data quality. But definitely, my bet, it will evolve.
Hmm. Let's see what do we come up for data quality today. So, what are some common issues? Let's start there. So what are some common issues with the quality of data? Like, what and do you see a trend going forward?
Common issues. I think, well, you have a lot of different issues for data quality, right? So um, let's start just by a problem that in the end it's a bias problem, right? So you start with a sample of data, and you start with that sample for your project, and you get like great results from that there. Then you go for production with that same model, and your model doesn't work anymore. And you ask, okay, why? Was was it my model? What was it? So it was a sampling issue, right? So this is one of the problems that definitely occur very frequently in the world of the data quality. So it's a bias, a human bias, but the human bias when selecting the data to train a model. This is one that you see very frequently, and that happens a lot. And it's only detected when you go to production. So imagine how much time you spend into, okay, getting the set trained and afterwards productized. So you see, this is a common problem. Another problem, and of course, um, it's related with missing values or the completeness of your data. Let's say the completeness of your data. So not that much, a lot of the times your production data is not that much complete. So it's not like having just a few missing values. There are a lot. And maybe sometimes they are not processed, or the time taken to have them processed is less than it should. Because either way, there are many different reasons for you to have missing values. So you have to go for the best type of imputation that you can. But sometimes we just go for, let's say, the most common ones, and that's it. Of course, there are other things which is related, and one of them that I mentioned as well, which is the timeliness of the data that you are using to build a model. So if you take like 6 times or 6 months or even 8 sometimes just to access the data, and when you access it after NDA sign and so on, that data might not have the value that you need. So, and access to data in a relevant time frame, it's essential to ensure the quality of your data. Don't take me wrong, it's not a problem directly related with the data that you have, but it's a problem of how organizations are agile, if they are agile enough just to make data accessible. And one that I really enjoy, and it's about unforeseen events. So we tend a lot to not give enough importance to variety and variability within the data that we are using to train models. Of course, I will put out an example that is very dramatic here, which is related with how COVID changed the machine learning models that we have in production today. But the fact is, there are in some verticals and markets that we already know that these fluctuations may happen. But a lot of the times, we tend to not simulate them enough or include simulations of those fluctuations in our data. And that results in models that, unfortunately, when these situations that are pretty rare a lot of the times, they happen, they just make you change all of the assumptions that you need in the past, and you have to redo all over again. And this is also a problem of data quality. So how much, of course, there is a trade-off. You're not going to always try to foresee things that might not happen, but there is a trade-off here, and there are ways to deal with this. But are the teams do have the data science teams do have enough time to deal with all of this, or enough technical support in terms of technology to support them to pursue these issues? I think that's also a good question.
Yeah, and I think all those things that you mentioned, I believe all data scientists could relate because they've dealt with them one way or the other. I think some of them like hit home, like selection bias for us was a big thing when you run a model in the wild. Uh, do you think that at some point we're gonna have this data quality checklist, let's say? So completeness check, timeliness check, or do you think that its use case and its data set is it's on its own and has to have their own rules and assumptions and all these let's say their own checklist without being something generic?
I think there are two ways this could go. For me, it makes sense to have a checklist because there are general data quality things that you should and you can check in an automated way. Okay, so those checks need to be a checklist, they need to be part of the data science culture of organizations. But there are others that are too specific to the business or to the use case or the data that we are working with. And those, unless we go for a very global data economy where everyone knows, you have a more or less standardized type of data across different verticals and so on, it is very hard to impose those. And those ones, and those are specific to the business and use case, will be part of the job of data scientists to comply with and to come up with as well. So it's not like the checklist shouldn't exist, but probably should be defined by the organization
Hmm.
and be part of the culture of the organization to define that checklist. Because many organizations have many different data science teams. Shouldn't we also standardize the way they work and the way they think? Or let's say they should structure their work? Because nowadays we are still dealing with a lack of standardization in many data science processes. We already see that movement. We have the MLOps, we have a lot of things that are already moving towards that. But this is the vision that I have in terms of the data quality process, at least.
Yeah, and it's still in its infancy, right? It's not something that has been explored extensively, and even in the software development that we're developing
Mhm.
software for so many years, there's still
Exactly.
guidelines and development processes that come out, and I'm pretty sure that it's gonna be the same learning process for machine learning applications. In the beginning it was kind of the wild west. I agree with you, but right now I think organizations that have AI as a first citizen, like a first class citizen,
Exactly.
I think they're putting steps towards the right direction as in terms of culture, as you can see with Google putting these things forward. uh, and I understand the principle: data build models, so with better data, we're building better models. Uh,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I think we would like to know how much better our models can be improved with better data. How can we be certain that the time and effort investment in data quality is worth it beforehand? Can we know a priori the lift, eh, let's say in a performance metric that we care by investing time in that?
Let's say it's very hard to say uplift how much you can gain. You know, based on your experience also as a data scientist, for every that you will probably increase the but how much, that's a very good question, and how much effort should you invest to achieve that improvement? It's key to have at least an idea prior. You can have some checks done, of course you can, and you can like draw a baseline and do some automated tests on the improvements, generic improvements on your data. Of course you can do that, but it's pretty hard to know beforehand how much you will gain for sure. That's pretty hard, especially because sometimes it depends on what your business wants as well. In a specific case, let's say that you, as a business, you are a responsible corporation and you want to be more fair in your decisions. You want to improve your data quality, meaning you want to have it fair. So you want to have everyone represented the same way in the data set. So this, based on doing this, means that you are increasing the quality of the data for fairness purposes, but you might not be increasing the quality of data for profit.
Hmm.
So you might achieve more fairness because you are concerned, because your to be you want you to be more reliable in terms of the public image, and you might not measure how much that increases in your profit, let's say, and you might have a data set that is not that fair, but improves your profit in a direct way. Because in the end, you're just representing you are building a model as an image of your biased society. And this is a bias that comes from reality, that does not come from the data. If you are having this data set more fair, you might incur in the loss of profit. So in that sense, it will depend on what you want to measure in the end. Okay, you can go for data quality and have different purposes or different objectives for your process of improving the data.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree 100%, but I was thinking more on the lines uh, let's say you have a certain type of data imputation. You're saying we'll have this technique, we have the other technique, or whatever. I was thinking more along the lines of we're taking 10 different data sets, or Kaggle data sets, or academic data sets that they measure state of the art, and just try these different methods and see what kind of effect do they have in
Mhm.
overall based on that distribution, let's say,
Yes.
and see and measure the performance gain that you can get out of those. Uh,
Mhm.
because I'm thinking it as a stakeholder, to be honest. That would be the first question that I had if I went into a meeting with an exec. The first question that would pop out, okay, the time investment and the money investment that we're gonna have for you to do that,
Mhm.
it has to be worth at some point
Of course.
uh, the outcome, right? But you
Of
mentioned
course.
something very interesting about biases and data reflecting the reality of uh, uh,
Mhm.
of, of of how we capture it. Uh, if a person is biased towards some race, and we record those people's actions, we're gonna end up with a biased data set no matter how you look at it. Uh, if we have a biased data set, let's say towards race, towards, let's say, height, towards
Mhm.
some slice of the population, are there ways to uncover it and correct it? And how accurate are these methods currently?
Yes, there are. It depends on how the collection of the data set was done, of course. I cannot, it's very different, very difficult for someone to represent if that reality is not even in the data. But if that reality is within the data and is underrepresented, it is possible to get that more represented. Either it's a problem of race, height, or gender, for example, as well. So it is possible. And nowadays, we can see, for example, the use of synthetic data exactly for those purposes to get the classes more represented, or just the selection. of using, for example, active learning just to select the right amount of data that enable you to have everything balanced, let's say. Those are methods that are nowadays used, and they are being used with very good results, in getting the to the point that you can have a model just to predict like a disease or the probability of having a disease, and you increase recall and precision for the gender or the class underrepresented. So, and this has a massive impact in our lives, right? In our day to day. It's just not it's not just something that is, let's say, a machine learning that likes to have everything balanced just for the sake of having it balanced. It's something that we definitely see impact, for example, healthcare, or even financial services, if you want. So when you are measuring the risk to to provide a credit to someone, for example, and European Union, for example, have very clear a very clear strategy about data quality for fairness and representation. So they do have those guidelines, and they are already working on the process of trying to set what is data quality for those specific cases of underrepresentation, let's say.
Yeah, I think European Union has I think the right mentality when it comes to these type of regulations regarding AI, and I hope that they continue doing that in the future. Like many steps have to be taken to ensure rules and regulations are good, even in a society that that AI exists. I think many steps they are needed towards that direction. And you kind of mentioned about health and finance. Um, do you think that different industries treat their data differently? I would imagine that, for example, as you mentioned, healthcare and financial services would be, let's say, extra careful around the data in comparison with an online service like Facebook or Pinterest or that does not affect somebody's livelihood in a very direct way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think so. And definitely we see the differences between those services. Financial services, insurances, also healthcare, as you mentioned. They do have to be extra careful with what data they use, how they use it, and to whom they provide that data. That's why these areas are so regulated and have some of them, like healthcare, have even specific regulations about the use of data. But there are others where we are more, I would say, more used to see data sharing. For example, telecommunications is one of them as well. Another one, I would say, online retail and especially e-commerce in general. They also, although they are very careful, because of course there are also regulations around that with personal data, but there is a use of, let's say, profiling data or data from a population for marketing studies and so on. So they do use data in a different way, and they do have different considerations in different ways to protect the data. In the end, they are different types of businesses, and I think that makes sense in a way.
Do you think it's easier to work on health or financial data other than let's say e-commerce data? Like with respect to data quality, is it easier to have a quality data set from healthcare or finance data, or from the online services, let's say?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that each one of them will have different struggles or different challenges in terms of data quality. And that there's a very easy example from the healthcare. Um, usually it's very hard to get data shared in between even hospitals or different healthcare institutions. That makes your data or the data that an hospital has available very biased, very biased. So if you want to build a machine learning model that is able to predict or understand better a type of disease, even based on images or MRIs, for example, it's very hard to do that and have that model generalizing if you're just using the data from an hospital. In some hospitals, you have like a demographics that just go between a certain age. For others, you have more like a different kind of profiles of individuals that are more younger. In other cases, you have also the hospitals for the kids. So you have different, and that's why you already see um, companies and also research in how can we make this data shareable. It's exactly because of that. Healthcare, it's very hard for them to build a model without that model being biased or having like the full vision what can describe that disease based on a smaller amount of data they have available. That's why it's so important for them to have data shared in between different institutions. That's one problem of data quality, for example, in healthcare, that I don't think uh, it might be more rare to happen in an e-commerce, like for example Amazon. Oh, I'm of course I'm mentioning a very big one, but it's a global. It has persons from every different ages buying there, so you don't have the problem of that much the problem of representation, but probably you have the problem of timeliness of the data. You also have the problem of completeness of the data, so a lot of missing values and so on. And I would say that financial institutions would also have some sort of similar problem as healthcare. So data sharing can be challenging, and also they also deal with, of course, and balancing data sets for I don't know, fraud detection, for example. Also, um, so I think they deal with different problems, but all of them have data quality problems. So some of them might be more challenging to have sorted out, but in the end, all of them have problems. Yes.
Yeah, I definitely agree that the spectrum of the issues might range from something very minor to just groundbreaking issues that they might have, especially with less data that you mentioned that from a single hospital.
Yeah.
Uh, and one of the ways to increase trust, let's say, to the outcomes of a certain model, let's say in a they developed a model within the hospital with that biased data, and in order to convince the people that their model is working as intended, is to provide with actual with an actual explanation that a person might understand. And explainability right now is a very hot topic at the
Yeah.
moment in AI community, and many people are tackling it from various angles. In your opinion, what is the importance of data quality in explaining a model prediction?
So definitely, I would say that above all, data and understanding the data that you are using and detecting the problems within the data is very important. So one of the main challenges that a lot of teams complain when having issues in production is how can I debug this issue? How can I be sure from where this wrong prediction came? So what was the reason for this wrong prediction? And a lot of times that reason is of course related with data. So that's why data in this case, and talking about data, let's say explainability or following the quality of the data through time, can be very important to ease the life of data teams when debugging what went wrong in production. So that's why data quality is not that step that ends at the beginning of the process when you are pre-processing the data, doing the missing values completion, getting the bias resolved. No, so data evolves through time, data change. So you have to understand how its quality is evolving. Um, Otherwise, it's very hard for someone to just debug a model. It's one of the main challenges that a lot of teams are complaining nowadays.
Yeah, and I think we haven't done many steps towards that direction. Um, do you think that platforms like YData, or you can enlighten me if there are other startups that they're actively working on that space. Uh, what are their main focus towards bringing more trust into the predictions and actually helping the life of data scientists through debugging, as you say?
Yeah, so first, there is the importance of guaranteeing that the process of processing your data and getting your data into the right quality at the beginning of, let's say, of the pre-training the model is very important. One of the things that happens a lot is these processes are done manually ad hoc for every single project, and different persons do different analysis from the data and do extract different insights. And when doing this analysis to do the pre-processing, sometimes mistakes happen in things, or it's even very hard to just get a pre-processing scalable, because you are dealing with a lot of data. You are a data scientist, you are very good in getting the data into the right shape, but to make it scalable, that usually uh, implies that you have a data engineering helping you out to make that process scalable. So to having this automated as much as possible is part of the work that YData is doing. And that work passes through checking the inconsistencies within your data in an automated way without you to having to implement the different methods that you need to check overall inconsistencies that you can detect just from the data without having to have like the business understanding. Okay. The other part is, for example, as we mentioned today, you want to get your data more balanced because you want to get a more fair data set. I should go for synthetic data. And how can I have synthetic data that gives me variability on the representation and scales for high dimensional data sets? We offer that in automated way. So it's a single line of code. Data scientists can do that and analyze the afterwards result in automated way. So they get right away what they are getting in terms of quality in that sense. And also, and finally, you are dealing also with problems around labeling. So you have data. It's not enough for, let's say, supervised learning, because you just have a small data set and you have a bigger one to be labeled. So you can count on us to do that work with you, ensuring that all of the problems around inconsistencies are not passed to that labeling process, for example. This is more or less where we are accounting and helping. But as soon as you do this all pre-training process and you go for the data set and you train the model and you are good to go for production, that's when YData's work stops. But there are, I think, two other startups that I know and I can recall now that they are tackling more that process of following the data quality through time. So they are following not this batch work that is about the pre-training models that we are tackling. They are tackling this, the one that, okay, you are set into production and now you want to follow the data quality. I think it's One of them is evidently AI, if I'm not mistaken, and they are doing a pretty good job in that area.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Uh, Fabiana, thank you so much for being here and for all the interesting insights. I had a blast.
It was my pleasure. Well, I think this is a pretty big topic with a lot, as you mentioned, to be understood and explored. But I'm very excited to see that this is definitely one of the trending topics and one of the topics that will be talked more and more as organizations want to adopt AI at the production level.
Yeah, definitely crucial. Uh, and guys, you can follow Fabiana on the links in the description, join YData's Slack channel, or consider joining YData altogether since they are growing and they are so awesome. Thanks again and keep backing up.
Thank you so much.
This is it. Your mind is now backed up. To learn more about the topics discussed or the guests, follow the links in the description. Now you have the chance to subscribe, rate, like, dislike, and review the show. Also, looking forward to hearing your thoughts in the comments. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining me, and see you next time.